Welcome to that Kingsville Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Hunt. With me is Kevin Black and Steve Ianson. On this episode, we are going to interview OPP Constable Steve Duguay and talk about some of the criminal activity in Kingsville. Dun, dun, dun.
The marijuana.
Devil's lettuce. A little later, we'll have Amanda Wilms from town of Kingsville. She's the Open Streets coordinator. She'll be in studio with us, and we'll talk how successful the podcast is going, and a little thing called Open Streets. We are famous. We were quoted as being a reliable source for information in the town of Kingsville. Gentlemen, we've made it. We don't need to do anything else.
Or that person is just completely misguided.
Or paid.
Or paid. It's like, I heard on the podcast, like, you shouldn't.
It was actually Kevin that was quoted.
It was probably like a pseudonym, posting on Facebook.
Kevin Yellow,
posting as his dog as a.
I heard myself say on the podcast that
must be true.
Yeah, it has to be true. Has to be true. Saw it, heard it. So, town of Kingsville has got some planning revisions and some things that are coming to council on the 12th of July. One of those affects the three of us, gentlemen. 200 Main is going through a revision for their site plan, and they're proposing a connection to the drag strip of Woody Crest.
No.
Oh my God.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry I came to the neighborhood because nothing like this happened before I moved in.
So we're blaming you?
You should absolutely blame me. No.
So this is because when we had Sebastian in before, we were mentioning about how the site plan had been approved for that area. So this is the official site plan amendment.
Right.
So this is the time that if people want to come to council and give comment, give their input on the design of what's happening there, this is when to do it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it'll still probably be through Zoom as we haven't fully resumed in-person meetings. But yes, this is that opportunity. Because now, if there's any revisions to the site plan, they've still got an approved site plan. So they can still build that iteration of the structures on the site. But some of the changes that they want to do, they were changing the building shapes or areas slightly, some parking garages, and, of course, the main sticking point being the connection to Woody Crest.
Well, beyond that, in Applewood, too. I mean, the traffic volume's crazy. My dad was over the other day, and he just happened to be out front, and 8 cars he saw go by the near stop sign. 5 stopped, and 3 didn't.
Shake a fist harder.
No, and maybe we'll talk to Constable Duguay about this. But honestly, if they were to sit by the mailbox on Pine Tree, they could hit their quota.
Steve, that's our job for the summer. What are you doing?
Well, we haven't done it yet.
Oh, we will.
Okay, good.
Jeez.
We're taking plates.
I mean, in fairness, it is worse right now because of the Jasperson construction, right?
Yeah. Well, how's traffic in front of your place?
There's zero traffic in front of my place because there's giant road closed signs everywhere.
You're just going to steal them so after when it's done. Like, I want a quiet weekend and in front of the neighborhood and there's road closed. I'm like, hey, what happened to Jasperson?
Now I will say, though, that, the town of Kingsville came out with a post to say, don't turn the street lights off because we're going through with the street sweepers everywhere.
Right.
Except in front of my house. There is like mountains of fish flies and buds and like it's a disaster. Now, I mean, they can't safely get the street sweeper through there. Fine, safety, but
technicality.
I mean, it is a mess. It is an absolute mess.
You just hook up a broom to the front of an ATV and just give her a dusting. Come on now.
So do we want to go through some of the details of the changes on the site plan because they're pretty immense?
Yeah.
Or do we want to wait and talk to Constable Duguay and then we can kind of get into it after?
We're getting close to
Dugay's let's do it. Let's do it because there are. The number of units changes slightly. There's more buildings. There's more things.
Big change. So as always, we want to thank our sponsor for that Kingsville podcast, Kingsville Brewery. Again, a wonderful place to have a nice cold pint of beer on Open Streets Saturdays. Want to remind you they're open at the Tap House from Tuesday through Sunday for dinner with limited seating, and of course, Open Streets on Saturday. Wednesday, Thursday, open at 4. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, open at noon. And when Mark was in here, he was alluding to something was happening down by the water. If anybody's driven down by the dock and kind of made a little gander at the big old blue building there, it's got a K on it now, and there's a fence out front. So.
Giant sideways K.
So yeah, sideways K, which apparently nobody understands what that is. But, I would say, wage guess, in about 2 weeks, I'd probably want to be there. Thanks again, Kingsville Brewery, for sponsoring that Kingsville podcast.
Something's brewing.
you
It's like giddy. Giddy.
Thanks,
Oh,
Gary.
wait, can you quickly tell the Tiger story? Because you can't throw one of those out there and not tell the story.
Okay, so really
Steve's
quickly,
famous.
a couple of weeks ago when Zach Short hit a home run for the Tigers, I just responded to the Tigers Twitter and said the long end of short stick. Well, last night, Monday night in Texas, he hit another home run, and they actually led their tweet with the long end of short stick. They followed that up with a tweet directed towards me saying, "Hey, we've been thinking about this since you replied. We used it. This is all on you. Thanks a bunch," kind of thing. And I was thrilled. I mean, it's like, I've made it big now. I can leave the podcast anytime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your dad
I've been
jokes
quoted by the
Yeah.
Tigers.
they're international.
The next time you go to the stadium, you'll be like, "Listen, pardon me."
I'm going to show them those credentials.
You just show up with your
VIP.
phone.
Can I sit? Yeah.
Remember this tweet? This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
And they'll be like, 1 second, sir. We've been waiting.
Let us show you to your seats.
This is the Twitter seat. This is for you. This is for you.
It's like section 393 where you can't even swear. It's the last one right by the big scoreboard.
You don't
right?
need to swear
You
anyway.
can't use any words that end in vowels.
Yeah.
Cabrera. Oh,
Gosh, thanks for
Get
coming
cheer him on
Thanks
now.
for coming to the podcast, Steve. You make it so fun for us. And joining us on that Kingsville podcast, we've got OPP Constable Steve Duguay with us. Thanks for joining us, Constable Duguay.
Well, thanks for having me on.
So Constable Duguay, one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about, and it's kind of something that's been on the minds of people around Kingsville, and I guess this area of Essex County for a while, is the number of large scale marijuana busts that there is now, and it was something that I know some of the politicians had been talking about years ago when some of these licenses have come out, and now we're starting to see some of those laws coming into effect, and some of these people starting to get charged, and some of these busts happening. So first, I guess we'll start with it has increased a lot. So first, why do you think we've kind of got to where we are today?
Well, we've seen a definite increase. Exactly the reason why? Well, everybody's can apply to Health Canada to obtain their license. And once they have their license, then their license stipulates what they can, how many plants they can grow, and at what location. And it's specified by address. So what we have in our area, and we've seen some in the Niagara area as well, where we have abundance of greenhouses, and some are either decommissioned from the original use and they're sitting idle, and we're seeing some people move into them based on their licensing, but growing more than what they were permitted to.
Is that what the majority of these busts are? Are those people who do have some form of license, but then they're just going over and above?
That's correct. What we call those an overgrow. So they'll have. I'm not going to get into specifics on the certain investigations that we've had because they're still before the courts. But I'll give you an example. So if someone was granted a license for, say, 500 plants, they move into a greenhouse. It has to stipulate on their license where that address where they can grow. And a lot of times they're not at the address permitted, or if they are, then we go in and in our investigation, we're pulling out 20, 30, 40,000 plants as opposed to 500 that's dictated on their license.
So how long does it go from complaint or suspicion to bust?
Every situation is different. We've had complaints from, or even just information brought up by members of the public, whether it's strong odor or lots of traffic in and out of a certain area, which never saw traffic before. Things that brought suspicion to people in the community, and they've called us. And then once we receive the call, we do investigate.
Now, those investigations, I know, being a reporter previously, when large scale investigations like this would happen, generally it's, special task forces that would have been part of it. These investigations, I'm sure, are a little bit different because of the way the licensing happens now, though. So are these, when these investigations are being undertaken, is it local units that are doing that investigating, or is it, some of the units that are maybe from London or maybe from Orillia?
We've had one is the OPP, Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau, is usually involved. I'm just trying to think of the acronym here. It's quite a long one. It's the Joint Forces, Provincial Joint Forces Cannabis Enforcement Team, and they're made up of OPP and other municipal services across the province.
Yes, Pajivskaset. Yes, good old that rolls off the
tongue. So when those investigations end up taking place and there are busts, a lot of people, and I've heard this from a few different people, are surprised to see that in some of them there'll be multiple people charged. In others, there'll be no one charged. How does that happen?
It depends on who is at that location. We've seen some locations where one person with one name is registered as a rental person for that location, and we can't track them down. So it depends on the investigation, and it depends on what the information and what intel that our investigators do have to go on.
So have we started to see an influx of illegal retail in the area? I noticed that we've got OCS stores that have been authorized and licensed in order to retail cannabis products. And it's no secret there's other sources available. So has there been an increase or influx of illegal retail that we've seen in the area?
Not local. These that we're seeing in the Kingsville, Leamington area that we've seen in the last year, none of that stays in the area. That all leaves the area.
Okay.
It's not destined for here. It's already destined for market. Probably, I don't know. I can't even go beyond this because my knowledge is very limited when it comes into the cannabis enforcement.
Sure.
However, it's not destined for this area. It's not destined just for the street here.
It's just convenient.
It's got bigger plans.
Yeah, it's convenient. It can be grown here with the infrastructure.
You mentioned sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. It's easy here. There's a lot of open spaces, and there's a lot of greenhouses already, and so it's easier to try to hide out.
You mentioned the odors and the increase in traffic. Is there anything else that maybe people shouldn't, I don't want to say looking for, but if they notice a change in things and they think is out of the ordinary, what they should be looking for, and then just simply call the OPP and with any suspicion like that?
Yeah, anything that they think that's just out of the ordinary. If you've lived in the area, if you lived in Kingsville, if you lived in Leamington and Essex County, you're familiar with greenhouses, with the other growers we have. You can tell they're a little bit more organized.
No pun intended.
The property, the property is a little bit more upkept. These individuals that are coming in are, number one is just to grow a product and get it out. There's nothing around the property that they're going to maintain. They're not going to do any upkeep. It's just things that the average citizen in Essex County we're used to seeing. If it's a little out of the ordinary, then just notify us and we'll look into it.
Now, a lot of people, when they hear the term organized crime, they immediately start thinking like it's on television that it's this group or that specific group. Can you speak at all to who it seems to be that are kind of behind these? Is it just that one group that seems to be doing all of this, or is there a way to tell?
I don't have that information. And again, that's left with our Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau, our Podesta team. They have all that information. We don't dig into that. There's usually bigger players in the background. So I couldn't tell you what groups or what, but who's behind a lot of these. They know, but it's still part of their investigations that are ongoing.
Do you expect that we're going to see more?
Of course, there's always an opportunity, right? Wherever there's an opportunity to make money, to feed an illegal business plan, you're going to find someone that's always going to look at an opportunity to do it.
When we spoke yesterday, we just talked getting away from the grabs, just crime in general in Kingsville. We know people generally feel safe here. Is there any sort of trends you're seeing in Kingsville as far as an increase in this, that, or whatever? And then maybe we can just talk about, again, reminders about the Lock It or Lose It program.
Okay. So right now, I just have the numbers. I was able to pull them up quickly from last year to this year to January to May. So I have that as a comparison. Overall, from last year, we're down in certain areas of crime, property crime, violent crime. We're seeing a downward trend just since January to May in the same period of last year. Now, what does that represent? I can't tell you. Last year was a unique year, and we're still living it. There's a lot less people out, but then there's a lot of property crime while everybody's hunkered down in their homes.
Okay. And then as far as any initiatives or programs that you can pitch as far as the OPP goes ongoing?
Well, you brought one to light, the Lock It or Lose It. Just recently, we've seen a large number of vehicles entered, some outbuildings, sheds, garages entered. And a lot of times it comes in with not securing your property. We have that Lock It or Lose It program that we try to educate the community about. And really it's a simple thing that we can do to make it difficult for these criminals. If we leave a car unlocked, they will rummage through it. If it's locked and nothing in sight or in plain view that they can see that entices them, they're not going to break a window. They're not going to try to get into that vehicle. They're looking for something quick and easy.
Yeah, it's definitely something that in Kingsville we tend to overlook because of the overall feeling of safety that we have in this small town. But we're susceptible to the same kind of crime as anywhere else. So yeah, some pretty insightful stuff today, Constable Duguay. We appreciate you spending the time with us tonight, and hopefully we don't have to read anything severe in the newspaper. Newspaper? We don't have a newspaper.
Oh no,
sorry, Steve.
It's online.
In the news, it's online. But hopefully that your task force and the efforts of the OPP are quite successful with controlling a lot of these illegal operations, and we can continue to live in the safe community that we do. So, thanks again for joining us tonight, Officer Duguay.
Well, thank you for letting me share some information with you.
Great.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So what kind of changes is 200 Main looking for the new site plan amendments?
So basically it boils down to parking. The original site plan had allowed for underground parking units.
Right.
And so the majority of the surface was going to be left empty with parking going down underneath the two condo buildings.
Right.
Underground parking is gone in the new layout.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's 3 separate parking garages.
Oh, so like covered like carport style parking?
Kind of, yeah. They actually have like doors on them.
Okay.
They're single story by the looks of it.
Okay.
I went through and checked some of the rough designs, and from what I could tell in the couple minutes I spent looking, they look like single story kind of units.
Mm-hmm.
The buildings themselves have been shrunk slightly. So there's still 2 buildings, 6 stories. Instead of there being 60 units each total,
yeah, 30 per building.
30 per building.
Yeah.
It's now 57.
Okay.
So a reduction of 3 units. Now, The big thing is that those two of those garage buildings are right next to the entrance of Woody Crest. So while the argument might be we're going to have the main entrance off Main, natural traffic flow, you would think those vehicles are going to take the 1 second drive out onto Woody Crest instead of driving through the entire development out onto Main Street.
Yeah, depending on which way that they want to travel, right?
Right.
Like if they're going to head north and go to Windsor, then yeah, they're taking Woody Crest all the way out to Jasperson and then out to Second and onward. And if they're headed towards Leamington, it's probably a crapshoot.
It's easier to take Applewood, turn right and take Applewood than it is to go all the way up Woody Crest.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I honestly, I
recommend
would think
everyone
so.
to do that.
And it'll be great. I'll cry.
Yeah, maybe.
Or take
but-
Wisteria then.
Yeah.
That's a better idea.
Yeah.
Wisteria, Lucas, and we'll send him that way.
Yeah. I mean, it will make sense because you'll skip that light at Remark, right? You'd have an easy pull out onto Main Street at the light at Jasperson and Main Street. Like, why wouldn't you pull it that way? Especially if you're going to go to Starbucks, is going to be right across the road there. If you're going to be going to Tim Hortons, that's pretty close. So you would think that would be kind of the natural flow of traffic, which is cool because it's right beside my house. Not with no bias whatsoever.
Hey, you just get to see everybody as they're headed
Right,
for
and
their
give them a
morning
wave.
show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
where
Gary,
that
you
guy
got
from
it.
the
Just give
podcast
one of
lives.
these.
Yeah, put a sign over.
Yeah. I mean, put a giant billboard in my front yard and just sell advertising
Well, if
space.
you still have your election signs, we'll just change the
All
caption.
over.
Mia can draw you again.
Right. It might be a better picture this time. Maybe I'll get legs.
Poor Mia.
So the thing is, though, is that initial section of Applewood before you get to Remark is a very residential street.
Oh, yeah,
it's an
absolutely.
older profile. It's not really made to have that sort of traffic going up and down it. And there's living there, and I know everyone says this in their neighborhood, there are lots of kids around.
No, it's
Well,
absolutely.
there's a park right there.
There's a
There's
park.
a bend in the road.
And Steve and I see it around the corner, further up Woody Crest because, all the traffic diversion through Remark and up Applewood over to Woody Crest, like it is a highway.
Right.
I sound so old.
I know.
It's a bloody highway.
Get your loud cars out of my driveway.
Not in my backyard.
So admittedly, so much bias here. So I am 100% biased.
People in Banner Subdivision are like, why do we? Who cares?
Look it, I care.
Golf views,
I just
like-
don't want these people in front of my house.
And we have a platform that we can.
Everyone's like, better those
right.
three guys than us.
And you know what? If you think it's fine, then you start a podcast.
Exactly. It's the traffic's
Oh,
worse.
we've set him off now.
Traffic's worse in my neighborhood in Kingsville. That podcast.
Now, I do think that the town has to somehow address the fact that they're planning to funnel like cars from 60 people onto a residential street because it is. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they kind of go about framing that argument. It didn't look like there was any actual recommendations in this report, which is probably smart from the planner this time.
Of course. He's gonna let it play out, right? He's not
Right.
gonna stack a deck against, especially as controversial as that entire property's development ended up being. Like, yeah, you're not gonna
No.
preload. But
So it's going to be interesting. There are some definite arguments that could, I would think, legally be made that they somehow are going to have to restrict the access out of that building onto Applewood,
right.
and not allow it to just be a simple out and turn.
Through fair, yeah. It
Whether-
emergency access, as it was, as I understand, originally intended with a gate that was for emergency vehicles only, I think is about the only way that you could have access to Woody Crest or Applewood and not impact the local area. Right? It's
Right.
not like, unless you've got 57 units full of people that are constantly calling 911.
I mean, sorry, on the flip side, I mean, the traffic on Main Street I've seen, like just cabbing it out to do mail this last week, is backed up in both directions at times. So, I mean, if they funnel it out, and I get it, it's Main Street. It is a connecting road. It should kind of be out there, but what's like, how much further is it going to be backed up?
Oh, I agree. That's why I think that they should put a pork chop at the corner of Applewood and Woodycrest so that it forces everyone to drive by Steve's house.
From the butcher at Kingsville?
Yes.
Yes, the pork chop from the butcher at Kingsville. That's the physical pork chop?
Yeah, that type of pork chop. No, it's
It's the
cement thing.
I know what it is. It's the pork chop. It
looks like a nice tenderloin cut chop. Right? It's delicious.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's summertime. We're having a great time here at that Kingsville Podcast.
We're getting to the real meat of the discussion here.
Oh, I like it. I like it. We're diversified.
Don't chicken out on me now, boys.
Oh my gosh, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen, there will be an opportunity where you will see us record this podcast live, which ends up being recorded anyway, but we have full...
I mean, you can see it happen.
And maybe you can participate if you so choose. You know, we're trying to figure out a convenient Saturday that the four of us can attend an open streets, and hopefully the weather cooperate, but you get to see this in person and just marvel at Steve's prowess.
Wow. That's... You don't even have that written down.
No, the harassment that will come my way.
Steve, Kevin will bring pork chops. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be good times.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens on the 12th. If that group of individuals that contest that development with such fervor a few years ago, was it a couple of years ago?
But yeah, I think so.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If they come back out in force to voice their opinions, because there are some things that there's now a somewhat of a significant change of scope with regards to the site plan that does have an impact beyond what the original intent was. So,
well, and there's an interesting part of that site plan in the top corner. It's talking about a future connection to a neighboring development, which is talking about a future connection to the high school property.
Convenient.
So that's obviously the control bylaw. Bylaw?
Yeah, interim control bylaw
that they put in effect that's allowing them to start now tell them, no, you have to make a connection to your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
So all the people that were kind of naysayers to that, you can see where that is starting to play into some of the plans that have now come forward.
Yeah, and it's what's going to happen with the high school is still highly speculative.
Right. And if you're wondering, that road that's going to connect to the high school property is right at Woodycrest.
Is
just if you're wondering, that little sneaky path?
I do.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the sneaky path road.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know. What else?
Well, here's, it's just going to end up being 50 cars blowing through Steve's stop sign in a day, and he'll be out there pointing his hairdryer at them.
Yeah, and his arm will fall off because he shakes his fist so hard one day. I gotta go on WSIB because I can't carry this. I shook too hard.
Carpal tunnel. Oh, do you work in an office? No, I shake my fist at traffic.
Steve, can we get a World Cup update?
A Euro 2020 update?
Whatever it's called. I don't know. It's like 21.
Congratulations to Italy. And I think when we made our early discussions, I did say Italy.
Mm-hmm.
We're certainly looking good early on, and here they are in the final. And then the other semifinal, as we're recording, is tomorrow, and it's Denmark against
who?
England.
Congratulations.
Well, it's
no. Are you gonna do it? I mean,
of course he's gonna.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing:
you can't call it.
Thankfully, Christian Eriksen is okay. He's doing well, but that incident has kind of made Denmark a team of destiny, if you will.
I know.
And if Denmark, I hate to say it, but if Denmark beat England, I'm okay with it, as long as Denmark beat Italy.
You want them going for everything.
Well, that's their destiny, right? Right.
Oh my god!
And then don't get me wrong. And if Italy win, congratulations! I know a lot of great Italian people.
Some not so great Italians.
And a lot of Italian people.
I sleep next to one.
Yeah,
she's in the great category, not the other.
No,
one.
actually, we were driving here tonight, and I stopped to briefly talked to Paolo, and obviously he was quite excited.
Yeah, he sent me a video with the air horns going.
Oh
I
boy.
was pretty pumped. It was down to penalties. It was a big game.
And it was a really good game. I thought it was going to be maybe more of an international diving event that would turn into a soccer game, but you know what? They played it. They played it well.
Oh,
They played it well.
Watch those lips.
Harsh.
Watch your lips.
Harsh. It was good soccer. It was. And it was a game, you hate to see a team lose on penalties, especially when it's your team, as I've seen before on various levels. But
so we obviously, if Denmark makes it through, good for them. If it does come down to Italy, England, what kind of a game are we going to see?
I think you're going to see a fantastic game. I think you're going to see you're going to see obviously the two top teams in the tournament. England going into the semifinal have not conceded a goal. Italy, through the first 3 games of the tournament, hadn't conceded a goal in I don't know how many games in a row leading up to it as well. So you've got 2 strong defending teams. The tournament has shown that Italy are a lot more adventurous going forward than they have been maybe in past tournaments. They've scored, I think this was the first Euro tournament, they'd scored 3 or more goals in a game, and then they did it twice in a row. So they're strong across the board. England, they had a tough time with Scotland, but they beat Germany, and I think it was the first time they've beaten Germany in an elimination game.
Oh, so I was going to say since 1945.
Since 1966. Something like it was like, so that was like maybe a mental burden for some of the fans. Maybe
It's kind
more
of fitting
than the
though,
players.
England had a tough time with Scotland, but they beat Germany.
Yeah. I'm not touching that one. But hey,
what about hockey? Is hockey still going on, or
but
did
I'm
the
not
Lightning
for
win
England.
yet?
And if it's England, Italy, then I'm either going to work or not on Monday. We'll see.
I don't think you're going to work at all.
Hockey.
Hockey still happens.
I mean, I've been trying to watch. I'll catch like 10 minutes and then the Canadians look awful, so I just turn it off because I don't like the Canadians. Obviously,
you
being
are
a Leafs
Canadian,
fan.
but you just don't like them.
Yeah, the Canadiens.
Canadiens. Les habitants.
I'm not a fan, but I really despise the Lightning. Like I just don't like that team.
Wasn't that the franchise that Yzerman went down and
Yeah. And he's the main reason why I'm not a big Yzerman fan.
See?
And then just seeing his
how can you
smug
not be?
face lifting the cup again. Get out of here.
He never
Steve.
lifted it with Tampa.
Yeah, they won it, didn't they?
Yeah, they won it last year, but he wasn't the general manager.
No, before that.
No,
he won it there.
no.
Listen,
Am I wrong?
Steve is an encyclopedia.
They won it in like 2004?
No.
And then they didn't. They hadn't won again until they won it last
Then
year.
I take it back. I still don't like Tampa because of Stevie Y's.
And somebody said on the radio that if the Lightning win, they're the first team to repeat since the Red Wings, and that's incorrect because the Penguins did it just a few years ago.
Yeah, so the Blackhawks, didn't they?
No, they never won 2 in a row. They won like every other one.
The
They won-
Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup in 2004 and 2020.
Yeah. So Yzerman
take
wasn't
it
the
back.
GM.
Don't take it
But
back.
he's
Just,
built
you still
on.
hate Stevie Y.
I still really do. You know what? It boils
That's
down.
just because he didn't. He made you wait for that interview.
Yes, and you know what?
Yeah.
I don't care, Steve. You didn't need to be on the bike that long. Like, just come and do the interview.
You should have told him you were from Omimi right away, and he would have been like, "Oh yeah, Peterborough."
Just some slight backstory for all those listeners that don't have a clue what you're talking about.
So I used to cover the Red Wings, and it was the series where they were, I forget what year it was now. Steve, you'll know. They were playing the Calgary Flames. Anyway, and Jerome
That would be
McGinley.
04, I think, because didn't
Yeah.
Calgary lose to Tampa Bay that year?
Yeah,
Sounds right.
sounds
Anyway.
right. Anyway, so Stevie Y kind of let go a play on Iginla, and Iginla scored a beautiful goal. And so I wanted to talk to him about it, and then he just we were in the dressing room, and he goes into the back area where their workout equipment was, and there was glass there, so we could see him.
Mm-hmm.
And he just sat on the exercise bike, staring at me and the cameraman from WDIV, and all the other reporters left because they were all on deadline and they had to file. But I was the person that's going to be reading the story in the morning. So I'm like, you know what? I don't have a deadline. I'm going to wait all night long. And the NHL has a rule that at the time that players had to be made available. So I waited, and the Red Wings media guy's looking at me. It's like, "Are you going to wait?" I'm like, "I'm going to wait." And the WDIV guy's like, "You know what? I don't care. I'm going to wait too. I don't have to file." and so we just sat down waiting, and finally he came out and he did the interview. He's like, "Hey, so you guys waited me out?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then he gave him the same cliche that you would expect.
Yeah, we played hard.
But he wasn't a jerk to you. He just was trying to make you wait because he didn't want to answer the question.
Answer the questions. Well, you know what?
Because they're obligated to, right? Their contracts in the union state that.
Apparently, he's a great guy.
Yeah,
he wasn't to me.
He just tried to.
But Bobby Orr apparently is a great guy too, and I have a Bobby Orr story that he is not a great guy.
Oh, you've just lost us listeners.
No, don't. Oh, yeah, we're down to 3. Way to go.
He's okay. Whatever. He's legendary.
Well,
I think
I caught him on a bad day.
Yeah, well, everybody says don't meet your idols, right?
you love him or not.
Oh my gosh, Stephen, I love you.
So my first job I don't know if we want to use this in the podcast, but my first job in radio was at CKLY Y92 FM in Lindsay, Ontario.
Y92 FM. Kevin Black here.
If you look it up, to this day, it's still in the same location. It's in an old Victorian house on the main street of Lindsay. And the bottom floor was the sales pen, and the top floor was
the
studio, newsroom, and engineering. And so, my first shift was a Saturday. I'm in by myself. First shift completely by myself. And the day before, they gave me like a quick run through. Okay, here's the button to stop the music. And then here's the button to put you on the air. Mm-hmm. And then here's like your 2 cart decks. So then you hit this button to play the cart. Yeah. And I'm watching and I'm writing it all down. I'm like, okay, I think I got this. I think I went to school for this. I know what's going on here. Like, yeah, there's a million buttons. I got it. I got it. The one thing they didn't tell me was to label your carts. So I'm walking in, and we didn't have a computer system to read news on. So I literally typed up news like in Word and printed it off, and then would go in with my shards of paper. Mm-hmm. And so I had shards of paper in one hand and carts in the other hand. And there was a little threshold in the studio door for soundproofing. And I trip and carts flail everywhere. And so it's like a sea of 8 tracks all over the floor, and my papers. And I have no idea what clips I'm going to play. I go and I have to fill 5 minutes. Yeah. Because I don't know how to operate the computer, the automation system well enough that if I don't fill 5 minutes, it's going to throw the whole station off time. Yeah. So I go and I read my first story, and I put the clip in, and it's supposed to be the fire chief, and I fire the cart, and it's the mayor. I'm like, okay, cool. So then I'm like, well, that's the mayor. And so then I set that one off to the side. I'm like, all right, process of elimination. And I'm saying this on the air. I'm like, all right, well, it got kind of messed up. So, and then I put the next one in, and that happened to be the fire chief. So I'm like, okay, great. So I throw that one off to the table so I don't grab it again. My newscast ended up being 7.5 minutes long. So then I had to call my boss, which was a whole thing because he was at the cottage. And so he calls me. He's like, I was listening. and he's like, you need to delete a song. And you should never do that again. I'm like, all right, I will. Noted.
What? That's not how we do news.
Consider it done.
Now joining us on that Kingsville podcast is Amanda Wilms, the coordinator for Kingsville Open Streets 2021. Thanks for joining us on the podcast, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to ask, can you please give us the intro? Because the video intro, it makes my week every time I see a new one come up.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I believe it goes a little something like this. Hi, everyone. It's Amanda from Open Streets.
Yes. Yes.
Do people recognize you walking around town?
They do, actually.
Okay, because I was going to say...
Is it because you're from Kingsville?
Probably.
No.
It really could go either way, but there has been at least once where there's a family that just moved from Toronto to the area. They looked at me, they're like, you look so familiar. I was like, well, it's Kingsville. They're like, no, we just moved here. It's from the video.
Yeah.
We watched the video last night. I was like, oh boy, I hope that's a good thing.
Welcome to our level of fame.
It feels good to be up here.
Hey, your voice sounds familiar. No, I was not the guy ordering Big Macs at 3:00 in the morning. Okay, totally not me. I'm the guy from the podcast. Oh. So yeah, 3 weeks in now.
Yes.
Weather's cooperated.
Weather has cooperated. We've been very, very lucky so far.
And overall,
It's been so well received. It's been so great to see the support that it has received, both from vendors as well as participants. Now that we're in the next phase of reopening, we've been able to have non-food vendors as well as music provided by the Folk Music Society. So it's been great to just see Kingsville kind of perk up again.
Full disclosure.
Yes.
I was on the Open Streets committee. So you're welcome.
Was he,
okay,
Kev, did you
good to
notice?
know.
I hadn't heard that Dave was on a committee for something
No,
I don't know.
before.
News to me.
I'm on like 5.
Okay.
4, whatever.
Well, good
And
to
I don't
know.
know how it keeps coming up.
No,
It's
it's
like
done.
every episode, like, I
Listen,
I was on
I
that
was on that
committee.
But how many
He's
of those committees
secretly
still
plotting.
exist?
Like,
one. Leave me alone.
Burned them all
There's a
down.
trend here.
I did.
I feel like you secretly are you just like plotting people to be like, and I was on that committee before you came on too.
Exactly. Yeah, just gonna stack
Is
the
that
deck.
how this is?
It's like,
Okay.
listen, you gotta call your shots every now and again. This is our podcast, right? It's like
Good to know though.
so yeah. So we got vendors now. We've got music, right?
Yes.
That was fantastic to hear because I could hear it all the way from my house on the north end of town here, and
Excellent.
it was like, wait a minute. There's music now? I was unaware that this was the stage that music was allowed.
Yes, finally made it to this stage. So the plan is we'll have a bunch of different local artists going forward. So it's just been great. It's really fun. There's been a lot of good excitement and good traction going towards it already.
Is there a lineup that's provided, or is it just whoever's available that the Folk Music Fest is able to secure for that date?
Yes, so they work on it each week. So I know they've worked with different local artists so far just to see who's interested in that. And so they will each week set up the lineup and they'll share it on their website so that everyone can find out ahead of time who's coming in for that following Saturday.
Perfect. It'd be great that in this week's video, when you do the old intro, right? Maybe you could tease a couple of the artists that are hopefully going to be here.
That has been talked about. So I think we're in the right track
Well,
there.
There's a reason he was on that committee.
When I was on the committee,
When
this
I
is my
was-
idea.
Pardon me. No. Actually, I think it was one of the good things that really came out of this year's preparation and planning for it to be a town event in order to be a little bit more than just what last year's event was, more diverse, more inclusive. Anybody from Kingsville, business-wise, is encouraged to participate,
Yes.
including that Kingsville podcast. You didn't know this?
I was also coming here to say, why have you not come and set up your table for a podcast
We're
yet?
busy people.
Oh, well, that
Yeah.
makes sense too.
Actually, that's very busy. We're
Yeah,
planning
I can
on
tell.
it, though. We teased it already in the episode.
We were worried that if a rainstorm came through, that we would get shocked and injured.
Yeah. I'm not.
That's a valid point.
I'm not
That
up for
is
that.
valid.
I can't join any committees after that happens.
No.
my integrity be in question. So.
Committees is just going to start dropping.
Yeah. So I apologize. The
Steve. I'm Dave.
So quick question.
Yes.
Vendors. What vendors can we expect to see at Open Streets? Because obviously people know about the restaurants that are there.
Yes.
They're fantastic. They've been doing their thing. What else can we see now?
There are a bunch of different vendors that are there just showcasing different talents, hobby, small businesses, things like that. We have an author and publisher who has been set up. We also have different areas for family activities and crafts, things like that. The Art Society of Kingsville will also be joining soon. We're in the works of getting them involved. So we'll have local artists. There's also different craft tables, retail vendors and businesses from within the closed off area have also participated, different bakeries, things like that. So really anyone within the Kingsville footprint that's interested in coming in has been invited to. So there's been a great range of just, taking a look at like what all Kingsville has to offer and having them come to one place. So that's a little sneak peek, and hopefully people will come to check out all the others that are also joining as the weeks come.
So, my son, Sebastian.
Yes, I do.
So Sebastian, I was explaining to him that because we know each other outside of the podcast.
Yes. I thought you meant you and Sebastian for a second.
Oh,
I
no,
was like, I would think so, but
I've met him a couple of times.
great kid.
He happened to be at my dinner table tonight. And,
excellent.
And I was explaining to him, hey, Amanda's going to be on the podcast. And he's like, oh, what's she going to be talking about? And I said, oh, she's coming to talk about open streets. And he's like, well, the streets are open all the time. And I said, you're right. It's kind of confusing. And so he was wondering why they call it open streets when the streets are closed. And I didn't have a good answer for him. So I was hoping you might be able to tell me.
You know, I feel like that's the part where I pass it over to a former committee member.
Darn right.
Do we have one?
Defer.
I'm going to defer that one to one of the initial.
It's open to foot traffic.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes, it does actually get confusing as well when we talk amongst the team and say like, oh, when we open for open streets, and we're like, well, no, because we're closing the roads for open streets. And then, you know, it's the chaos at the end of the night too of we're opening the streets, like, but you're closing open streets. So it's just, Sebastian is definitely on track with something. And he's more than welcome to join the next roundtable discussion about that name going forward.
Okay. I'll let him know.
It's very intuitive.
He'll be very excited.
Yeah,
Yes.
we were afraid that it was like if you called it closed streets, that people just wouldn't come to Kingsville at all because Division, Main Street are closed.
How about just Street Fest?
Just streets.
Street days.
Come to streets.
Remember last year? Remember what happened last year? It was a crazy time. I wasn't involved with that. That's when they named it Open Streets.
Okay.
Sorry.
I also was
No, I
not,
know.
so
I mean, no one has the answer. I've asked everyone. Sebastian, when he said it to me, I'm like, oh, I feel your pain, son. I know what you're going through.
And I find news. Next year, listen, because of the success that we're having, and this is perpetually intended to be a Kingsville event, maybe lobby to change the name. Like maybe you can call it
Sebastian Streets.
Oh, that would
We'll
really
just really get him on board.
Wow, he would be very excited by that.
right. That
I
would
could
be
see that.
a celebration of one, or well, we know of two Sebastians.
Yeah.
Yes. McGregor Morans, Sebastian Morans, who did appear on this podcast, touting our famous people we've had through the door.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
So for the first 3 weeks, we've had some well received audiences and whatnot. What do we anticipate going forward? Because this still goes all the way through to mid-September. So as we continue to build, what else can we expect?
There's always room for more vendors as the summer goes on. So a lot of them have either already started coming in, setting up their tables and booths, or they're coming in shortly. But again, there's always interest that's coming along. So there really could be, 5 additional vendors from now that I don't even know of that will come. But every Saturday there is still, each Saturday we kind of get different insight into it, different areas that we can bring in new entertainment participation, whether a family standpoint or, from volunteers, things like that. And so always wanting to have the event also match the attendees coming and also still making it new each Saturday, so it's not the exact same thing, but, having different musical guests, different artists coming. You'll see different faces out there from the staff as well as volunteers, and vendors themselves just bring so much excitement to it that I can see within their own businesses also, I think, just expanding and changing upon what they bring and offer as the summer goes on.
You mentioned the one family who had moved here from Toronto who recognized you, and that was through word of mouth or just conversation where they were from.
Yes.
Is there any way to gauge where people are coming from other than word of mouth and maybe not recognizing them? Do we know if there's a lot of foot traffic from out of town? There's
a lot of foot traffic, actually, that's been from out of town. It's been great. I think the different areas, like within where Open Streets is blocked off, there's different vendors, staff members, there to engage with people who are coming, or, handing out chalk to draw and add to like the chalk drawings in the middle of the 4 corners. And through a lot of that and conversation and asking where are people from, or, people coming and saying like, I didn't even realize this was going on, or like we came specifically for this. There's a wide variety of traction that's coming in, a lot from Toronto area, whether they're moving here, coming to visit family. There's a lot coming from Chatham that will book, an Airbnb or a hotel in the area to stay. From Windsor, it seems to be a popular date night as well. So there's been a lot from different, whether it's like local Essex County, Chatham, Kent, just moving here, things like that. So it's really cool to see so many different people, whether familiar with Kingsville or not.
So in the grand scheme of things, the economic fallout from this is beyond just what maybe initially hoped with the restaurants and the downtown businesses.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's been great to see and so quickly.
So 3 weeks in, what major challenges have you experienced? Is there something that's not quite flowing as easy? You can be honest with us. It's a safe space. Safe space.
You know, the biggest thing that comes to mind, and I don't know like who I would go to, you know, to try to work on this, is the fish flies. As I've recently been informed, Kevin, I believe, was one of the ones that had corrected me on this, that they're not June bugs like they are synonymously called. The fish flies, I honestly must say, out of our hands, but one of the biggest issues, you know, but luckily a short season. And I think they really just wanted to participate, maybe much to the outside of, you know, right within the Kingsville area, these fish flies coming in and just needing to get in on the fun.
Yeah.
Charge
them an entry fee next year.
Yeah.
I know we really should. That would
make
be
millions.
Oh gosh.
Millions.
We really would.
I mean, we could just pollute the lake and get rid of them again.
I mean, that's another option. Might be even easier that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's got side effects. Whatever.
I mean, it's only drinking water.
So people are able to get their experience, have their meal, visit the vendors, do their shopping, have their family time, whatever. And everybody's pretty much clearing out at 10:30, 11 o'clock when the streets reopen.
Yeah.
To traffic.
Yes. When they reopen in a different sense. Yes. So typically about 10 o'clock would be the last call, because by 10:30 we do need to start getting vendors off the streets so we can clear them and open them by 11 o'clock. But I mean, the fun honestly goes right until that point. It's pretty consistent from the time that we open, or we're at the tail end of opening everything up, and people are there and ready to check it out, whether they have reservations or just want to grab food and go, or whatever it is. But it's been, it's a steady consistency throughout that.
I think the best time to drive Main Street right now is Sunday morning. See all the chalk art and all the, the wonderful stuff. It's the
It's
first
a lot
time
of
caught me
fun.
off guard. I'm like,
What does that say?
You want to
Steven!
Sort of, yeah. It's been great to see. That's one of my favorite parts, to be honest.
And these are the changes that we kind of discussed with the committee in order to make it more of a family-friendly event. So I'm excited to see what the Art Society brings as things, again, go through the phases. We got another week or two until 3, unless, for whatever reason, we decide to regress again for the 10,000th time. But all things considered, right? Like they've come to the table with a lot of their own events and things that they want to help facilitate in the music as well. So, I'm glad to hear that with having a coordinator this year and having control over, what happens. It's a great way for Kingsville to build an event on an annual basis. So,
yeah, I would hope to see it continue going forward, and it's been great just collecting different input, from attendees and vendors as well. I feel like the more that people participate and attend, and then they come up with their own things, or whether it's within their own business or Open Streets as a whole, just to always keep it different and new and exciting as the summer goes on. So everyone has really participated in so many different aspects. So it's been just really great having the community come together again.
Yeah. When we do our on-site, we need to have a follow-up interview with you just to see if you change your opinion at all.
During the day, I'll be like out of breath. And like, oh yeah, like everything is so great. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, I gotta go.
Yeah, well, no, we'll be there for a while.
Definitely not as chipper as the beginning of the video.
This podcast is sponsored by the Kingsville Brewery, so we may or may not have had a few things to parch our thirst.
Right.
So we may be able to.
I joined too late.
See.
Should have been right at the top of the hour.
Top of the hour news
With Kingsville Brewery.
Well, thanks for taking the time out to come in on the podcast and talk about Open Streets. Again, when's the final week that it's supposed to run?
It'll be on Saturday. September 11th will be the final one for the season.
September 11th. So mark it in your calendars. So make sure that on a Saturday, if you're available from 4 o'clock till 10 o'clock, every Saturday, weather permitting. And if there is a weather cancellation, we'll see you in a video on...
Yes, you most likely will see a video. There will be some emails and social media posts, and we will get it out there. But whether
it's you running up and down the sidewalk yelling, it's canceled.
There's a 30% chance it's already raining.
Oh, that's how I used to do weather.
That's where I got all of my insight from.
There's a chance it's raining outside at the moment.
Yes. Little shout out to Kevin and Mean Girls.
Yes.
The classic lines.
It's a throwback you haven't heard in a long time. But yes, thank you very much for joining us on
Thank
that
you so
Kingsville
much.
podcast. So
Thank you.
that concludes another episode of that Kingsville podcast. We want to thank Kingsville Brewery again for sponsoring the podcast. Remember, they are open for Open Streets reservations, open through the week as well. And you might want to check out down around the docks in about 2 weeks.
Interesting.
Give it a drive by.
Okay.
Want to remind you to subscribe to that Kingsville podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. Please subscribe and comment too.
I yelled at Alexa in my kitchen the other day, "Hey, Alexa, play that Kingsville podcast," and she did. I don't know how, but it happened.
She knows.
Yeah.
She's the only one that knows.
From somewhere.
The gatekeeper. Thanks again to Gary Glass for production. We'll see you next time.
Going.
Yeah, go England.